Hey guys, welcome to Coptic Topic. I'm Maurice,
And I'm Maria.
and today we're here with
Abuna Musa.
Peter.
Bishoy.
And today is our 1-year anniversary of starting Coptic Topic, as well as us starting off season 2.
Hey!
Okay, so today's topic is sin in plain sight. Basically, we're talking about the Western world normalizing sins. Okay, so to start us off, Abuna, can you define what sin is for us according to the Bible or according to like Coptic Orthodox
Sure,
rules, I guess?
sure. So the word sin comes from this word, it's in Greek, it's in your Bible, and the word is amarteia. That word, if you translate it into English, is not sin. It actually literally translates into missing the target, right? And so it's kind of like if you have a bow and arrow and you're trying to hit the target bullseye. So sin is when you've missed the target. So what is that target then? The target is Jesus Christ himself, right? So we were all made, every single human, not just Christian, but every human was made in the image and likeness of God. And so when we strive to become more in the image and likeness of God, we're doing good. But when I miss that target, that's what sin is. So it's not like contrary to popular belief, people just think it's like I didn't follow the rules that was given to me. It's not breaking a rule. It's when you didn't hit the target.
So when you say target, does everyone have the same target, or is it like, okay, so
Uh,
it's not individualized towards...
No, every person has a different way of getting to the target, right? So everyone has a different, like, unique personality. Um, but we all have the same Christ that we're worshiping and the same God who made us, and it's the same image that we all have. That makes sense.
Yes.
Do y'all think there's a difference between like societal sin, like today, and um in like the Bible, like what we consider sin like in the Western world and what we consider sin in the Bible?
I feel like in some aspects, maybe. I mean, a lot of like the government law, especially in the US, was based off the Bible and some rules from the Bible. But some of it is also ignored, like for example, like sex, I guess. For in the Bible, people say don't have premarital sex, but in the US it's normalized. So yeah, that's what I think.
I was gonna say, in First John chapter 5 verses 16 through 17, it says all unrighteousness is sin, and there's sin not leading to death. So that kind of brought up the question to me: is there two types of sin? Is there more than one type of sin? Um, if you could just touch on that a little bit,
Yeah.
Abuela.
So first to like answer your question, right? I do think that like the sin that existed before, like and in other parts of the world as opposed to the Western world, it all is the same devil who's attacking us. It's the same things that were like the same result that he wants, which is to take us away from God. It may show up differently, you know? Like somebody might struggle with pride, and the way they struggle with pride may be different depending on the culture and the society and the generation, whatever, all that stuff. But in general, it's the same result. Just take us away from God. And regarding your question about having two different kinds of sin or different kinds of sin, um, I'm gonna give you how I understand it, at least like from how I was raised in the church. I'm sure if you ask this question to other people, they may give you other answers. But I think there are two different kinds of sin, and the sins, each kind does have the same result, which is take you away from God. But the way that they affect the way that the result that they have on you and the result that they have on the things and the people around you is what you can distinguish from. So there are sins against a person themselves, and then a sin against the environment and the people all around you. That's why, like St. Paul, for example, in First Corinthians, he talks about how sexual immorality is different in regards to the like nature of sin. He says it's not just a sin for the sake of like God said it's a sin. He says the sin because it's you sin against yourself. You're sinning against your own body, right? As opposed to sinning against someone else, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I do think that there's a difference in how the effect of sin kind of hits, you know?
So like kind of like whether if it affects other people or not,
Yeah,
versus just
for
primarily
sure there's
affecting
sins
yourself.
that can affect me and others.
Yeah.
Sins that just really hurt others, but not really that much me. But at the end of the day, all sins do have the same ultimate result again,
Yeah.
which is takes you away from God. So
I was gonna ask in like regards to society, do you think it's always been the way that like society hasn't taken it as serious as like Christianity?
mm,
I
what do you
think
mean?
'Cause, like sorry, there was so many things that are normalized today that, like, in the Bible that are considered a sin. Like, do you think back then it was the same as, like, that divide that society,
Back when? Like,
like, maybe in the time of the Bible being written?
mm, was it the same? Yeah, I think so. I don't see any difference in like the way that it had an effect. I'm sure it was maybe different in like how bad was it, like how many people were struggling with it, and how deep was the sin, but um, same effect, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into, like, the different types of sin. Let's, like, narrow them down. So why is premarital sex a sin to us?
Um, I mean, I think like I'm pretty sure it was like kind of explicitly said, right? Premarital sex, because it was like, um, because when you get married, that's like when the two become one, and then like I feel like there's a difference of Actually, I don't want to say that. Never mind.
I was gonna say, I think I didn't look it up before this, but there's a verse in the Bible, I'm pretty sure, where it's, like, about when you do have sexual relations with a partner that's, like, a part of you,
Yeah,
um, like,
I think I've heard
being
that before.
taken, basically,
Yeah,
and, like, whenever you separate, I guess, that's, like, they still have a part of you with them.
yeah,
So it's, like, you can never become whole, I
I
guess.
think that reverts back to what Abuna was saying. That's like a genuine effect on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So regarding the
Oh, oh, sorry. I thought we were pausing. Sorry, I wanna keep going.
We're pausing already?
No.
Oh.
so yeah, regarding the effect of sin, um, specifically sexual morality. Like, do you guys understand? I'm sure we all know this, but sex is not a sin,
yeah,
right? Like,
Hmm.
like the act of sex is actually, it's not even neutral. It's holy.
yeah. It's like a blessing.
Like, it was designed by God, and there's nothing God can design that's just like okay or bad. It's like it's always good, right? So sex is not a bad thing, but to what's the point of sex in the first place?
To have a child or to get
That's part of it, but not the whole point.
It's part of the sanctity of marriage.
That's a yeah.
Like when
But,
you
but what does that even mean? What does it mean, like to have sanctity in your marriage?
I've never thought about that.
I always make say that like we intend to use like Christianese. Like we have this language where we say things like faith, love, Bible, Jesus, things like this, and sometimes we need to kind of question and make sure we understand what these like. What does it mean to be sanctified in general? Then like in liturgy when Abuna says he sanctified it,
Isn't that like blessing it?
blessing no, because blessing it was also what he says before he
Oh,
sanctified it, right? When he had given thanks, he blessed it, he sanctified it.
yeah, yeah.
So what does sanctifying something mean? Anyone know?
No idea.
So the sanctification means you're going to set something apart for that one function that has one job,
Okay, so
but
that's like the only
it's
thing
not
it does.
allowed to have any other function.
Okay,
So like the chalice that we use to put the wine in that turns into the blood of Christ, I can't go and like make a cup of tea and like use the chalice, right? That's then I've removed the sanctity from it. It's no longer consecrated or sanctified. So there's sanctity in marriage as well, which means there's something that is just for the boundaries of marriage. And sex is included in that, right?
Mhm.
Now, it's not just to have kids because there's people out there who they can't have kids. Should they also not have sex if they're married? It doesn't make sense, right? So you can have kids, and that's part of the result of sex. But the main point as of why God created sex is to build that connection in the most intimate level between you and your partner. There's nothing more like connecting to a person than the act of like having sex with a person. So like I know like people don't really like talking about this stuff, but it's important we know this because sexual immorality comes from not understanding that. Like that's like the foundational level. Um, yeah. What else about it? Did I even answer the question?
Yeah.
What was the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, you
I
for
feel
sure.
like in society it's very much like celebrated. Like they see
Yeah.
like especially like premarital, it's like something you celebrate and it's seen as something good.
yeah.
But for us it's the complete
I,
opposite. So I like it does go back to that original sense of sin is different in like Christianity versus society. Like we don't celebrate it when it's pre-marriage. Well,
I was gonna say,
big.
I feel like it has to do with times changing, and my reasoning for that. was back when Jesus was preaching. We've all heard of the story about the adulterous woman who got caught,
Yeah.
and the whole village kind of threw in the middle, and they were like, "Oh, what should we do with her?" And Jesus was like, "Whoever is clean amongst you should throw the first stone." So I guess it was common practice back then that if you're caught in the act of adultery,
Yeah.
you'd be put to death, right? But nowadays, when you look at it, like, um, I know it was talking about adultery, but like for premarital sex, for example, that's like, I would say like in like schools and high schools and things like that, it's almost seen as like a flex.
Yeah.
At least when I grew up in a public high school and everything, like I didn't have a primary friend group, so I was kind of like hopping around here and there. But a common thing I saw amongst like a majority of all the friend groups was like when we like talk about this type of stuff, like it was kind of viewed upon as like something like, oh, that's very cool. I want to get like that, and it's like hard to achieve. Whereas we know it's like or what we're taught is like this is something that's holy and should be reserved for marriage, as you said. Um, so I feel like that's why I felt like it dealt with like or it ties to times changing.
Mm.
And I wrote down in my notes, I think maybe it's like it's due to age, or like when you're at a public school, you have multiple backgrounds and multiple different upbringings, where things like that could be viewed as like more popular versus more like the haram, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that was my little yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that you brought up like the times of changing, because this whole topic that you guys wanted to have for this podcast was normalizing sin, right? And so I was thinking about that like on my drive here, and I was realizing like there's so many things about the sins that we like see in the world today that we see it as like at face value it's normal. Like premarital sex is wrong, but when people are doing it, we just see it at face value as okay, well it's wrong. That's it, and we don't kind of go deeper. But I was thinking about it and I was wondering like what happens when you live in a world where it's actually totally normal? Like what else comes out of that? And I was thinking, and this may be like a bit deep, we don't have to go off topic, but I was wondering like I noticed, I think from my own ministry as like a priest and taking confessions and things like this, for the people who are struggling with sexual morality in whatever way that may form, it changes the way they view the world. Like it's not just they broke the rule and they sinned. It's like a guy will look at a girl differently and a girl will look at a guy differently now. Like the act of lust itself is when you stop looking at a person as a human being and you start to look at them as like a way of being pleasured, you know? So imagine like living in a whole world where that's how everyone looks at you and that's how you're supposed to look at other people. Like that's pretty dark. So it is one of those subtle, what are they called? Silent but deadly, like sins. It's just like it kind of multiplies in its terribleness.
I actually have a question. I know in Exodus it's like Jesus said you shall not commit adultery to like show marriage, sexual marriage and showing the
Mhm.
seriousness of the sin. But how would you like define adultery?
Yeah.
Like just sex with someone before marriage?
So there's two different schools of thought in the church fathers about this. The one that's like it's most obvious is the definition of adultery today, which is you already have this covenant relationship with a person through marriage, and then you cheat on them in a sexual act, right? That's considered adultery. But that's just one aspect of it. The other aspect is, and this is, I think it was like Saint Jerome and another church father, I think it was Origen, but he said that there's spiritual adultery, which is when,
I was literally just about to ask that, like, is there different types?
yeah, there's
Mhm.
there's there's a spiritual adultery where, think about it, what makes a person cheat on their spouse? It's when they stop choosing their spouse, right?
Hmm.
So aren't we supposed to have a relationship with God that's the same as a marriage? Like he calls the church, which is us, his bride, and we call him the bridegroom. That's marriage language. So we're supposed to have the same relationship with him. What if I choose something else over him? Is that not adultery?
Yeah.
You see how that works? Like many marriages I've seen kind of get split up because one partner or the other chose like their career over their spouse. They chose their own wants and desires over their spouse. Well, imagine doing that with God. That's the same. It's adultery. So there are different kinds of adultery in that way. And so it may not just be necessarily boxed into sexual sin, sexual morality. but adultery can be committed when you choose to be committed to someone or something else, even though you're already committed to something or someone else, you know?
What if like you commit to a person? This is a what if, by the way. It's not like
Sure, sure.
actual thing. If somebody commits to a person, they date for like a few years, they haven't gotten married yet, but then they had sex, right? And
Hmm.
then after that, by 2 years, they get married. Would it still count as like an adultery sin?
That would be no, because that's the sin of what's called fornication,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? Adultery is when you've already made a commitment, and a true like commitment is what's the marker of a real commitment? You've made a sacrifice for it.
Mhm.
So like, what are you sacrificing when you get married? What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't like the term like, I mean, I know what you mean by sacrifice, but I'd say it's like more of like a promise that you commit. Like,
But you are sacrificing something
yeah,
by the definition of sacrifice,
yeah.
meaning like you're giving up something.
Okay. I mean,
What are you giving up when you get married?
I guess this is gonna sound bad,
yeah,
but being single.
I don't want to say
I-
Yeah,
freedom. I don't
it
want to
also
say
like
freedom.
Other potential,
actually you're both right. And there you go. I think you just said it. Say it
other
again.
potential partners.
There you go. Like
Okay.
as a guy, when you are getting married to a girl, you're basically saying, I'm not gonna marry other girls.
Yeah. Okay.
As a girl, is when you
Yeah.
get married to a guy, you're effectively saying yes to one guy, but also saying no to every other guy in the world. Right? That's a sacrifice you're making. So
Mm.
if you're gonna do that, then that is what makes it a commitment. That means you have committed. You've proven the commitment by this bond, and you've done it in the eyes of God. That's why we have marriage ceremonies. So when you like get married and then you cheat on your spouse, that's adultery. But if you are not married, you haven't made that commitment, and then you are like dating someone and then you go and cheat on them while you're dating, that's considered to be like future adultery, I guess. It's like that would be a good reason to break up, obviously, but it's by definition fornication. Yeah.
Okay, do you want to switch topics?
I
Sure.
was about to say, question about abortion
Sure.
and like our opinions on it. I feel like I don't know, especially on campus, I'm constantly getting stopped and asked about my opinion,
Hmm.
and I want to be able to like voice it in, like from a Christian perspective, but I feel like I don't know enough about abortion itself and our views on it. Like I understand like, oh, don't like no to abortion, but there's so many cases where I'm just like I'm honestly not sure. Like
Yeah.
there's
Guys,
I
it's
think
just opinions before we go to it.
Yeah.
yeah, of course. Like I think it's for those that are going to be listening to this podcast and also for all of us in the room. I think it's important we just caveat by saying like because this is such a controversial topic, number one, I would prefer we speak freely, but number two, um, I'm definitely not okay with people taking things out of context, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're giving your opinion, it has to be respected.
Mhm.
And this isn't a theological essay we're all giving right now. We're giving opinions about these things and trying to learn. So
Yeah.
it's a safe space, but that includes the people listening to this podcast. Make sure you keep it a safe space.
So, what is everyone's opinions on abortion?
Okay, so I'll start off with this one, right? Because
Ready.
I told them, or they asked me, should I add it? I was like, yeah, okay. So this is my view, okay? So, and I'm gonna bring a little bit of politics into this, if that's okay. So with both political sides, I feel it's either 100% for, 100% against, right? You have one side that's like ban everything, and then you have one side that's yeah, like
For your
yeah,
for all-
free for all, right? I think, okay, I feel like abortion should be a tool, but not as a tool as in like, oh, I had sex with this one person and my consequences are gonna bring forth a child. I want an easy way out. No, because then that brings up like if you had the responsibility to have sex in the first place, you should have the responsibility to be able to bear the consequences that come with that. But I also want to bring up like I'm not a woman myself, but like there's definitely health effects that could come from bearing a child, right? And some of them could like put the mother's life in jeopardy and the baby's life in jeopardy and things like that. And I feel like at like a certain point, you know, like this is gonna sound very like mean, but like if my wife is like in potential of being dead due to us having a child, I would rather abort the child and save my wife's life.
By the way, that is the church's opinion too. At
N-
least in the
n-
way I was taught.
yeah, abort the child and save the wife's.
Yeah, save the
Save
wife.
them.
Okay.
I'm not gonna abort both.
Thank
Come on.
Two
you
for one
said
package.
abort the child, then save the wife's life. So I was like,
Yeah,
Abort
abort
the
the child,
child, saving.
who saved the wife. So yeah.
sorry.
But I just don't like the notion of like you have to ban everything or ban nothing at all. You know what I mean?
I agree with
I
you, like
Like
fully.
But
Yeah.
there's one part I like.
Okay.
No, I agree with it, but there's one part I want to add on.
Okay.
I don't agree that it should be banned because, like personally, I wouldn't like we know what's right for us, like we know what's right, but not everybody like believes that same thing. So I feel like banning it is the same thing as like forcing it on someone. Like I wouldn't want someone who has a different belief to do that to me. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah,
just talking with others, like I wouldn't want to do that to I wouldn't want them to do it to me.
Mm.
So why do it to them? Like I know what I believe and where I stand on this topic.
Mhm.
So, but people have other beliefs, so why would we force it on? So I agree with the don't ban it altogether, but also a point I want to add is that there's this common saying that like abortion is or is not murder. And
Mhm.
I'm honestly like I'm stuck on that point. And so this is where I get like confused like
Yeah.
about the banning versus not banning.
Right.
It confuses me because I don't even know like personally, I thought that abortion was like murder because if you were conceiving a child, that was like God sent that child. So
Right.
isn't it technically
Of-
life?
Yeah.
But
I
then people
think
say like at specific weeks,
sorry.
the heartbeat, sorry, the
No,
heart
you're
in
good.
the brain. And I don't know, like I'm so lost when it comes to that because
Sure.
I feel like I don't know enough to be able to have a logical like stance that like I can back up.
Right. So, do you want me to answer this? Or you want to give your opinion?
No, you got it.
So there is a stance that we have, which is how do you like this all comes down to that question, by the way. This entire argument comes down to that one question, which is when does life start?
Yes.
How do you know when is the beginning of life to even make the accusation that you're ending someone's life through abortion? So the way that life should be understood, from my opinion, according to the scripture, life begins when there is potential for growth.
Uh-huh.
Like think about the way that God deals with us all the time on a regular basis. When we sin, when I'll speak for myself, when I sin, okay, he doesn't like come down and kill me. Okay? Even though I know that the result of sin is death.
Yes.
The wages of sin is death. That's what St. Paul says in Romans. So if I'm still alive, that means God sees potential in me, right?
Yes.
That's a sign of his love and mercy. Therefore, God treats us according to the potential that he sees in us, which means we should treat each other according to the potential that a person has, right?
Yeah.
Like if you sinned against me, I'm not going to just like, I should forgive, because of the potential that you have and so on. We have to look at a fetus, even if it's a little ball of human cells, the same way. Because once, if you want to talk scientifically, once the sperm fuses with the egg, right? Then there's something called proliferation. Once that begins, that means there is now growth that happens in the womb of a mother. Now the cells are multiplying and it's becoming a fetus and a baby and so on.
Yes.
So that's growth. Once there's growth, it means there's potential. So that's life. So we see the moment of conception as equal to the beginning of life.
I want
Make
to
sense?
like ask a point. Like what do you say to like the point that I think it's like 6 to 10 weeks
Yeah.
where the activity like there's brain activity and heartbeat.
Right.
And there's like an argument about when someone's like not a fetus, but like someone like adult is on life support, they keep them on until there's no brain activity or heart activity.
Hmm.
What do you say to people that say that like since there's no brain activity or heart activity before the 6-week period, then it's not
So when
living?
somebody is ill and sick and they're on life support,
Mhm.
right? Whether it be a natural illness or if it's something external that infected them, whatever it may be. If they're on life support, they are deprived of the thing that continues their life, right? They need life support in order to continue. When you have a child in the womb
Mm.
that's still growing, they have everything they need to continue. So there's a difference between stopping one versus stopping the other. You guys following that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's the difference though?
With like the life support person,
Mhm.
it's like it's kind of like what you said. It's like they have or they don't have like the necessary like if you were to pull the plug as they say, then that's it. Khalas.
There
But
is no potential for life
yeah.
in that person.
Yeah.
They need literally what's called life support,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't mean that we just kill everybody who's on life support, obviously. Right? I know that we were planning on talking about euthanasia, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I know we'll probably get into this in a little bit, but
Yeah.
regarding those two analogies, they're not the same thing. They don't equal to each other because a baby in a womb has everything that it needs in order to grow into a baby that has functional brain and can think and all these things.
Hmm.
So to end that means I'm stopping the potential, right? But then when you have someone on life support, when they're brain dead and all their organs are stopped working, but they're on life support, they don't have the potential to continue on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I like that. I was gonna say, I have like a little scenario that I like made up.
Okay.
What if this is really extreme, and I apologize, but what if say your daughter comes back and like she got raped, basically.
Okay.
Okay, she's 14 years old. Do you think if you like a 14-year-old, like it's really hard for them to like have a child and like raise it? Do you think killing that child would be against like our belief,
I
even though like
I was gonna
there's
say
no way?
oh. I was gonna say, that relates to what Boone was saying earlier, where when we were talking about whether the mother's life is at jeopardy. I feel like at 14 years old, I don't think you can like safely bring a child into the world without probably damaging your own health.
Well, technically you can. That's why 14-year-olds can become pregnant.
Yeah.
So Saint Mary, when she left the temple, and she was around 12 or 13 years old. Right. There's like rough arguments and estimates as to when she conceived Christ. And there's the whole mysteriousness about it because she was a virgin, obviously. So it's but there are many women throughout history that have given birth at the age of like 12 to 14. It's like once they get their menstrual cycle, that's when they're able to have babies. So um yeah, it is possible. It may not be as like healthy as it is today with all the technology we have, but it's definitely possible to be a healthy mother at 14. It's just really hard in today's society. That's not my opinion, by the way. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
countering that.
Okay, so going back to the 14-year-old thing,
So
Abuna, you were saying that like back then it was not as safe as right now.
yeah. So like I think you're saying how, abortion back then, like having a baby back then was sorry, having a baby today as a 14-year-old, right? Because you brought up the scenario
Yeah.
of this 14-year-old who was raped, right?
Mhm.
And so if that's the case, then what's your opinions, guys? And I think you were telling me how like, well, she should be allowed to have an abortion because it's not healthy for her body.
I'll
But
I think.
it is
Go ahead. You're good.
as well.
I'll finish like kind of what I touched on. Okay. So completely unfiltered, I'd probably say like right when it wasn't like she didn't want to have the baby. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, while she could physically bear the baby, I don't know if she could emotionally bear the baby, the responsibilities that come with the baby, as well as the like the financial stuff that comes with it. Obviously, as a father, and like I'm gonna do my very best to be able to support her. Um, but again, like I'm not gonna be here forever. And while like this does happen at a young age for her, it doesn't relate to how old I am. So if I feel like she can't, like I would strongly feel like I don't think my 14-year-old daughter could like provide the life that is needed for this baby. Um, and like given the circumstances. Um, yeah.
I think, of course, like if it. Sorry, Mara, I know
Yeah,
you
you're good,
say
you're good.
something. Um, I think if it were to come down to it, and my daughter came to me and was like, "Hey, I was raped," right? I think it would be first of all like a really tough decision in itself. But I don't think I would take that decision. I'd like just try to like mentor. I found a verse yesterday that kind of like relates. Deuteronomy 24:16 says, "Fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor children shall be put nor shall children be put to death for their fathers. A person shall be put to death for their own sin." Basically, it's saying like if that baby, like has nothing to do with the sin of the father, the person that raped the child, then like the
It
baby
shouldn't have
shouldn't
to
be
suffer.
put to death because like
It's not
that's
their
not their
fault.
sin, that's
Wait,
their fault.
wait, can you say that one more time?
Yes. It says, "Fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor shall children be put to death for their fathers. A person shall be put to death for their own sin." Basically saying everyone is accountable for their own sin. The baby didn't sin. So
Yeah.
the father is the one that sinned, but so the baby like Zembwe, you
Wait,
know?
what do you mean the father is the
Like
one?
the person that raped.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
sin, of
Of
course.
course,
It's,
yeah,
it's kind of
Yes.
like in an
But
abortion. Who's suffering in an abortion? The baby.
Yeah.
yeah,
The parents are not suffering because they get to live on with their life without this baby, right?
yeah,
Where they looked at the baby as the cause of suffering. So now they ended it, and now the baby's the one that suffers. And so I think Marie's saying that like there's this verse that is in our faith that clearly states somebody should only suffer for their own sins.
Mm,
They should suffer for it,
mm,
not suffer as in like agony, but suffer as in like they need to be held accountable,
yeah.
yeah,
right? And so that's better to hold the dad accountable and the mom accountable for what they did together, even if it was rape or if it was not rape,
Mhm.
right? um, rather than making this baby have to deal with the consequences of someone else's sin. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Did I get that right?
Yes, that was perfect.
This isn't very fair because we were just having this conversation. We went on a tangent. But yesterday, I had found something that kind of like changed my perspective. And someone had said a child who is conceived through rape or incest is as much made in the image of God as any other human. That
Mhm.
child's life should be protected just as much as the life of any other human being.
Mhm.
And so we were talking about this the other day. And I feel like, first off, one thing I would never decide for my daughter, like God forbid this happens, but for my daughter, what like what should happen. Like at the end of the day, that's her. Like I personally am strong about the your body, your choice, not in like the like oh just my body, my choice, do whatever I want with it. That's not what I'm like saying because you're still like the temple of the Holy Spirit. But like I'm not gonna be the deciding factor over anyone other than myself. And so that's when like it comes into your scenario. What I would do is simply be a mentor, like you said. Like I would never get the final say. I would just like say like this is what I think. But then again, the Bible, I mean not the Bible, like someone had said this and it's so true. Like that child's
That is
still made in the image of God.
Mhm.
So wouldn't it essentially be wrong to get rid of this? Like both things would be hard on the 14-year-old.
for sure.
An abortion isn't easy.
Mhm.
You don't just go and you're done and you leave. Like it's mentally challenging to get one, but it's also mentally challenging to like raise this child that you remember your past with. So they're both like they're challenging. They're not like there's no easy way out. So if I had to choose, since they're both hard, wouldn't it be better to like the baby to continue its life because it if the baby was supposed to be conceived, the baby would have been conceived.
Mm.
Like you don't conceive every single time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
Okay.
So I feel like if the baby was to be conceived, then like that should happen.
Hmm.
Like it's in. I don't want to say like God's will, but like that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It happened, so that means it was meant to be. God
Yeah.
wouldn't have allowed it if it wasn't his.
I don't know if this is like out of my
We were
place,
arguing about that
but I'm
yesterday.
trying.
That makes
We were
sense.
trying to say like I don't know. I don't know if she understood me wrong or we understood each other wrong, but we were saying like I was like, "Oh, like since the rape happened, like God is allowing it to happen." But I don't know what your like
That
opinion on it was.
that like I don't know that allowing it to happen that it's like very hard to.
I don't think the rape came from God. That's not what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I think that just the fact that like she was raped is just the way it was meant to happen in God's will. That's
This
The only problem with that is that people will counter that and say they will look at what you just said and say, okay, so God he let me get raped. Like, why
I don't
would
know
I
if I'm
love
wrong
God?
or not, but
No, it's not that. I think it's just the sentiment of the way you say it
mhm.
could mean something different than
Yeah.
what I think you actually mean.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you mean that like, okay, khalas, like enough. This baby is now within your womb. We can sit here and like be upset about it and mope about it and like feel the sense of this was an unjust situation. This was clearly an injustice. But now what? It's like we should have get to the point of acceptance and be like, all right, God allowed it in my life, so that means there was a reason for this.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Rather than being like it was God that did it, you know?
Yeah, I wasn't I didn't
Yeah.
like
and like yesterday I was also talking about how it's still part of that free will issue. Like
Right.
that it wasn't God who like I don't know how to say this, like allowed it, like said, let it happen.
Yeah.
It's more like that person has that free will and God gives us free will. And with that person's free will, that's what they chose to do. Of course, it's incredibly wrong, but that's what they chose to do. So when I was thinking of it in that sense,
Hmm.
it was like, if that was to happen, I saw it as like, God will like protect you. And if he knows you're emotionally able to like I don't know how,
Can I
this is such a hard topic.
can I give like a thought experiment as
Yes,
well to
yes.
kind of help us kind of flesh all of this out? What if this wasn't a baby
uh-huh.
that we're talking about, but a grown man or woman?
What
But
do you mean?
this is a grown man or woman that's a child of someone, and they are homeless and completely dependent on a person. What would you do in that situation? Would abortion be even in the conversation?
Mm,
Wait, say that one more time.
like to kill
So
the adult off?
to kill the adult, would that
Oh,
even
would
be
you
in the
kill the
conversation?
No,
adult if
probably not.
Why not?
Uh,
Why
I
is
mean,
that
I
even in the
okay,
conversation?
so
A
like
chance to turn around, I guess.
I
That's
guess,
because
but
you
also that's
see
like
the
a
potential
yeah,
for life.
Yes.
You see the life in them already, right?
yeah.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
But that's the idea. We didn't even start questioning the possibility of should we just get rid of them or not,
Mhm.
right? So like this all comes down to have we accepted that first like the first barrier in this argument, which is it life or not? Is the fetus life or not? If I look at it as life, then I have to treat it as if I would an adult person. Someone who's the same age as me, older than me, younger than me, doesn't matter. But this is a person. Who
Mhm.
cares what age they are and whether they look like a person or not? So how would you deal with it then? If it was a grown man or woman that you had to take care of and you didn't plan it, they just showed up to your door, you feel like you're not financially ready, you feel like you're not emotionally ready, but they're a grown person, what would you do?
I mean, I guess at that point you try to find resources.
Boom. See? You see, so with the idea, like we need to start getting across, this is what I think Christians need to start doing, is not like getting so caught up in the ethics and the morality of it, but getting more into like what's the alternative solution to abortion, right?
Mhm.
And by the way, this is what the church has done from the beginning of like the church's existence, which was provide a place, a safe haven, a support system for those who were poor, weak, orphans, widows, strangers, people who had at one point depended on someone, and then that they no longer have that dependency, so their life is at risk.
Mhm.
Like you ever notice in the prayers of the Coptic Church, we always say, for the sake of the widows, the orphans, the travelers, the strangers. We say that at the end of the liturgy, or the
Mhm.
end of the litanies of the liturgy. Why are we? What are those groups all have in common? The widows, the orphans, the travelers. Travelers doesn't mean like somebody who just like walks into through your city because there's no cars and stuff back then. They walk through your city and they come and knock on your door. What do you think they want?
Food.
Like,
They need assistance. Like, I'm on my way. Do you have anything to offer? Back
Yeah.
in the early days, they used to have a section of like resources in your house just to offer to people who come and knock on your door.
Mm.
Like that's it's amazing. And so we're praying for these groups of people. Why? What are they all have in common?
Less fortunate.
yeah, I was supposed to.
They are in need. They actually can't survive on their own. And so that's how we're supposed to see like a woman who was raped and now has a fetus in her womb. She's now pregnant. We should try to like, well, how can we get this guy to at least reconcile with this woman and like see if we can get them to actually be in a healthy relationship? Or if that's not usually that's not the first like line of treatment when it's someone who was raped, obviously. But let's say it wasn't a rape, it was just premarital sex and the girl got knocked up. That would be the first line of treatment. Let's get them married. Let's get them together and make a family. If that can't work, okay, let's have some support system from the church. Let's see if we can get resources from the government because I know there's certain like stipends that you can get from the government for these situations that are just like, they're not the norm situations, but they're extreme situations. So there's resources. There's a way to have this baby be a normal human being that functions in civic life and for this mother to not feel like her world is over. We can get the mother to fall in love with this baby.
But I just wanted to say, like, you brought up like my body, my choice earlier. I have a like perspective on that. In the Bible, like God hates like children sacrifice, right? Like, whenever they used to sacrifice like the babies to like the gods, like the like the statues and stuff.
Pagan.
The pagan gods, that's what I was going for. Um God hated that, and like there's verses in the Bible, I don't have one right now, but there's verses in the Bible where it's like, oh, like that's not what I'm for or anything. Like God's like, I don't like that. Um basically when like a mother is sacrificing like a child, like God hates that. So basically when you say my body, my choice, God has ownership of your body. Like it's not your body. Abuna said earlier, like off air, he was like, um, his body, your choice, like something like that. I don't know,
That's a really
but
good point. I feel like I was
yeah,
being slightly selfish about that.
no,
I don't know. I feel like I've heard the my body, my choice versus I don't know what the other stance is. I can't lie. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I mean,
But
there are the two extremes for sure, where it's like it's my body, my choice, or it's his body, and I'm gonna like not have freedom. I'm just gonna do whatever he tells me what to do and be like a little like puppet, which is
yeah.
also wrong, by the way. It's the balance of both, where we see him as our creator, as the one who made us and formed us. Like it says in the Psalms, I formed you in the womb. He says it in Jeremiah as well. And he says, I knew you even before you were formed in the womb. So it's like he has this vision and this connection with us even before we're even made.
I
So
had that verse.
this idea, sorry.
I was just saying I had that verse right there. Like,
Oh, did I?
no,
Sorry.
no, no, no. I'm just saying.
So like the idea is that he gives us life and we are to manage that life. So it is his body in that sense of like he's the starter and the source of life for me. However, he gives me total free will to choose, do I want him or do I want something else? And that's the whole idea of sin. So I usually like to tell people it's not my body, my choice, but it's his body, but I get a choice in what I do with his body,
I really like
right?
that point.
So that's not it's not slavery and ownership. when I say it's his body, but it's also respecting that I have a choice. Like I do my job and God does his job,
Mhm.
basically. But we work synergistically together.
Yeah.
Does that make
So
sense?
I definitely changed my stance on that. It's definitely his body, my choice, because
Go free
the
will.
free will.
Mm.
Do y'all
Um,
move to? Oh, you have a
sorry, I
question?
had a question. Yeah,
You
sorry,
were
sorry.
quiet this whole time.
Last time you said that we should help the girl that got raped with like whatever resources,
Mm.
like trying to get over with that guy again, or government resources for single mothers and stuff like that. Would you count giving the kid to an adoption center or foster care as a resource, for example? Or should we not do that? Since they can't technically financially support him or the baby, sorry,
If they
or the
can't
baby.
financially support him, then we need to find a way to financially support the mother to make the baby
Mm.
financially to make the family stable.
So
Because
adoption center like foster care shouldn't.
giving the baby away is I think there's exceptions, but
Mm.
I can't confidently from my own understanding, just this is not the church speaking, this is Abu Musa. I can't confidently say that like it's a sin or it's not a sin. Because I know like children there's a whole orphanage called Coptic orphans that's really famous in Egypt
Mhm.
called Coptic orphans. And some of them come from families that were Christian, Coptic Christian. So that means that someone gave their child to an orphanage, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be that they were orphaned from other means, but regardless, um, giving the baby away, who are we serving there? Like we talked about abortion, like why is it a sin? Because who is it serving?
So
It's selfishly serving the parent, right?
Yeah.
Or parents. And so who are we serving by giving the baby away? If it's still going to be serving myself, we need to consider the baby over ourselves
I
first.
mean,
And
some
if it's
people.
like not possible, then we find other means that the church can provide.
mhm.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, some people could also say that giving the child away is a service. Like if they're
It
like
could
really
be.
financially bankrupt and not like they're like drug addicts or alcohol addicts, for
Yeah,
example.
I mean it's a hypothetical situation. I've never seen it, but I also am not like in that world, being here in the West, right?
Yeah.
But you'll see that more often, and I guess like well, you'll see it here in the West, but more in like the slum areas, in the less like what is it, like financially stable areas of America and so on. You'll see it in the other areas of the world as well, like third world countries. But if that is the scenario, I see that making sense. But I'm sure there's other factors that go into it. So
I mean, I'm not gonna say whether it's wrong or not, but I think like if you look from the perspective of the child, him growing up, he's not gonna look like, oh, my mom was like not financially stable. He's gonna be like, oh, like she gave me away. Like
if this baby lives in an orphanage, but she's still a mother, gets to be a mother to this baby, like you don't need money to be a mom.
Yeah.
You just need money to raise the child and keep them safe and fed and so on, right?
yeah,
So if an orphanage can help keep the baby fed and safe and so on, and but that mother still needs to be the baby's mother.
that's a good
Does that
point. Yeah.
make sense? That's what we are more concerned of, that this
Yeah.
baby has a upbringing with a healthy relationship with their mom and with a father figure. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That was my question.
Yeah.
This is
Okay. Okay. Go
a
ahead.
little bit of a jump,
Mhm.
but this is like completely not related to abortion. But then what's the harm in a little white lie? This is not really related,
Mm,
but still on the
Wait,
topic.
before we get into that, can we talk about euthanasia? I feel like this is more like
Yeah.
sure.
Can we define euthanasia real quick?
yes, euthanasia is. Do you want like Google or like what?
I
Google. We'll go Google.
Okay.
think Google is better than like opinions for the definition.
Okay, euthanasia is defined as the painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease or an irreversible coma. The practice is illegal in most countries.
Okay, so it's like
I don't know if it's illegal here. Hold up.
okay.
There's it's legal in 10 states or
Okay, so
jurisdictions.
do we think it's a sin or not?
Can you read the definition again?
Yes. The painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease or in an irreversible coma. Basically saying like
Yeah.
they're
Someone
unable to function and they're like in pain, like would it be okay or acceptable to kill them off?
Wait, it doesn't say unable to function though, right? It says
Suffering from I don't know.
suffering incurable disease.
Yes.
So this definition is why it's legal in some states and not in others, because it's so vague.
Yeah.
Like, how do you define suffering? How do you define pain? How do you define like incurable? Like all these things, this is
Says
where it's a controversial topic.
it says the patient in question would typically be terminally ill.
Terminally ill.
Yeah. So like
Again, I can like my brain's crazy.
I
I
don't
can twist that to make it so that all of us are terminally ill. We're all gonna die at some point.
That's true.
We're all gonna die at some
I
point.
like that. That's
That kind of makes sense.
yeah.
But I understand that ill means your body is in disorder,
Mhm.
right? Ill means that you're not functioning properly to the point where you have good health, right?
Mhm.
Um,
So do y'all think
yeah,
it's like okay or what? What do y'all think?
There's
That's
so many aspects that go into that.
that's
we'll talk about them for the aspect.
yeah.
I
Okay, is
mean,
the guy how severe is the pain? Can he live his day-to-day
Okay,
function?
so you want like scenario like
Give me a scenario. I feel like it's very
okay,
scenario based.
someone who's bedridden
Okay.
cannot get up on their own.
Okay.
They're functioning, but like
Okay. Do
barely.
they have the ability to praise God or no?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not including people who are in comas because like
Okay.
there's no way you can decide to kill someone off if they're a coma.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure like
You can actually.
really.
Yeah, but it's not killing them off. It's kind of like if someone's on life support,
Mhm.
the doctors will many times gather the family together,
Just be like, yeah, they're
and say, so there's no hope in this on us from a physician's perspective, from the scientific perspective and healthcare perspective. They don't insert spirituality, obviously,
yeah.
but from science and history and like research, this patient by definition has no hope of living. There's no hope for them to to bounce back and be alive.
Okay.
Therefore, yeah.
So
Therefore, they are given a choice of like, do you want to keep them on life support for like a spiritual reason, or do you want to like our recommendation as doctors would be like, this is the best it's gonna get. So it's up to you guys, kind of thing.
so this is like the scenario. It's like they're not gonna make it much longer. They're like
Well, we don't know that. I
Okay.
don't.
No,
I don't.
they will make it as long as they're on life support. They can
okay.
live for years on life support.
Yeah.
But
But
without the
like
life
it's like their
support, they won't
quality
be.
of life is like so bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like that's like a do not resuscitate.
Mhm.
Like you being kept alive on life support isn't that the same as someone keeping you alive by doing CPR and stuff?
Do not resuscitate is different though.
Do not resuscitate is more of
Like
that's
they're
the
already
will of
dead,
the patient.
but don't bring me back. It's like you sign something off. It's like I have died.
Oh, but this is
Do
like
not bring me back.
it's like family
Don't try again
decided
with
now
me.
you
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I feel like wait, patients have like they can be like
What?
if they're conscious, they can agree to.
Yeah.
They can agree.
DNR is signed by the patient.
Yes, I'm saying like with euthanasia,
Mhm.
like to
Somebody else making that decision for
I
the
don't know.
patient rather than the patient making
Oh, so the
decision.
patient
oh,
doesn't
the
make a
patient doesn't have a
decision.
say in it?
No.
If I
let me see.
recall correctly, this might be a stretch. I don't remember. It's been a minute since I learned about this, but I'm pretty sure the person has like someone designated to make that decision.
Yeah.
If they were to go unconscious and they can't make a decision of should they stay alive or not.
Right.
If I remember correctly, there is someone who they've had this conversation with that
Mhm.
that person knows what they want.
Yeah.
So if they can't talk, that's what they
Yeah.
want to have done to them.
It says here that it can be voluntary or non-voluntary. If they're able to give the consent, then yes. If
Yeah.
they're not, then
Also, about your question as is it okay or not? I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I used to work with patients who were in hospice care,
Mm.
and a lot of them like it just means that they're like they're very ill and they likely won't like make some cases they might not make it out of like the illness and they'll end up dying from it. But a lot of people were like they were okay to an extent. Like they could like I would go past a lot of patients and they had like worship music on and they were okay,
Mm.
but they couldn't do a lot of like things alone.
Like they wouldn't survive outside of hospice care.
Yeah, like
Basically.
they need that care to be
Right.
okay. They need to be fed. They, like a lot of things that they need to have done, but like I don't know if I'm understanding the definition incorrectly, but like mentally, sometimes some people could speak, sometimes they couldn't, but they could understand us.
Mm.
They understood the worship music that was going on in the background or whatever they were watching. They could understand, but they couldn't communicate with us.
Mm.
They couldn't do anything themselves. So I feel like ending someone's life to reduce the suffering. I don't know. Like they would have to choose that, and I feel like it's not.
okay. But biblically, what do you think?
I feel like I agree with Maria on the voluntary thing. They decide that at the end of the day. But if they can't decide, then I would say it depends on the potential. Like
Mhm.
that's like one thing we talked about. Like, so like for example, a baby, we take care of the baby, we feed the baby, we tuck them into bed, whatever. So people in hospice care, I feel like it's like God's plan. If God's plan is to keep them on the earth and someone takes care of them until their last day on earth, then yeah,
I agree
voila.
with you. I have a verse from Deuteronomy 19 that says, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life that both of you and your descendants may live. Basically, saying if you're given the choice between life and death, choose life.
Yeah.
So if as Abuna said, like going back to abortion, like every living human has potential. So I feel like ending their life prematurely should not. I don't think we should
Keep
do
in
it.
mind there are exceptions to this though.
Yeah.
And I think the root of this really comes down to like how we view death actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it's seen as like if we have this wrong understanding of death, which is what that when a person dies, they cease to exist.
Mm-hmm.
If that's my definition of it, then we're gonna be at a really big crossroads in our hearts when we have to figure out should we end this person's life or not. But you notice how like in the church, how do we look at death? We don't say the
Departing.
word dead. What do we say?
Departing.
They departed. Like they took off on a plane. They have a location to go to next, like a departure. So when we speak in that way, the church is teaching us that this is just like this is part one of their whole life. Part two, which is the beginning of like the real life, the whole point of why we were created, is the next part. So I don't that like my perspective is always like we shouldn't be so afraid of death. And if I am sitting here in my heart playing tug of war and I don't know whether this is a good idea for this like if the person is unable to continue to live for God in this world and they have no like reason to like they can't even commit repentance and confession and like that's it, then why keep them here? We should be excited to let them be in the next life.
But don't you think like that's getting rid of any possibility for like miracles and stuff like that?
Is it though? Because what if I've already like we've been praying about this for weeks and months and years, however long the person was sick. We've been asking God for His will and not our own will. Like we're doing all the things that we have been taught to by the church
Mm-hmm.
through Christ and His apostles. So like at this point, there has to be an okay and an acceptance
Mm-hmm.
of God's will is this.
I mean, okay, sorry.
Good.
I was just gonna say like, wouldn't it be like God's will for them to still be here because they haven't been taken already, like naturally?
Well, if what's keeping them here though?
The life
If
support.
it's on life support,
If
then
it's life support,
that's kind of
right? It's like
Yeah.
we're keeping
Okay.
him here, not God.
I I don't know.
I
Or
feel
are you saying that like God let us make life support, so therefore it's by association God is keeping him here? Is that kind of
No,
what you're
that's
saying?
not what I was
Oh,
saying. I
okay.
was saying like
If God wa-
yeah, if God
if
wanted
God
them like
wanted to
them,
take them, then I
like
feel
they
like
would have taken them.
that would have happened.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I'm saying.
Like can this is such a silly question. Can someone die on life support? Like I feel
No.
not that
They can?
educated enough.
Technically, no.
They
I don't
they
think they
could go
can.
brain dead, but
Yeah, but even on brain dead, they're still on life support.
yeah,
But like
Oh, are
okay,
you saying by the definition of
yeah.
death
I'm
being
saying like
brain death? I see.
I don't know about their physical, like heart, lungs,
I
and
wish I studied this one.
organ,
Mm.
I feel like
but
I'm
I
not
have
that
no idea.
educated on it. But
I don't know, but like again, I don't want to confuse scientific terms of death
Mm-hmm.
with what we're referring to because the choice we have to make of euthanasia or not is dependent on the spiritual understanding of these things.
yeah.
Because if we're just gonna go off of science, then yeah, there's no point in keeping them. But everybody would just be like, yeah, just go ahead and like let them pass, you know?
I don't know. I
I
think it's
actually
a
have a
really hard
question about that.
topic.
Sorry,
It is.
Go ahead.
can I ask a question?
That's what I was saying.
Um, if for example you're on like you have like brain cancer stage 4, it's horrible, you've been getting treated for like a year or so and it like hurts every time, you can't function properly, you can't do what everyone else is doing, you're hurting mentally, physically, everything, right? And they give you an option that you can just choose life or death, and according to the verse that Marie said, we should always choose life. If somebody chooses death, does it count as suicide? Would that be a sin or
Let me throw you a curveball and kind of a support of what you're saying.
Mhm.
Do you guys know the story of Saint Moses the Strong?
Yeah, like a part.
not
Do you know how he died?
No.
So like back in that time in the desert, there were barbarians that used to like live in the desert and
Mhm.
they travel. It was basically like gangs
Yeah.
basically. And so they would go in and they would kill a bunch of like people in any little like village, kill them and pillage everything that they have. And that was like the whole purpose of that group of people. So there was this story of Saint Moses where he heard that barbarians were coming to his the monastery that he was at, and all of the other monks and brothers were like,
Yeah.
okay, guys, pack up everything. We got to go. They're on the way. And like everyone ran and they saw St. Moses staying.
Mm,
And they were like, are you not coming? And he was like, because St. Moses used to be a murderer
mm,
where he was a Christian. So he said, like, it says in the Old Testament, for those that have taken up the sword and killed by the sword, they must die by the sword. So I'm staying.
mm.
And then he allowed himself to be killed. He chose death. But did he actually choose death?
I don't
by
know.
what I was saying before. Like,
Yeah.
did he really choose to die, or did he choose to start his next life?
I mean, you could also look at that as, did the other priests run out of fear, or did they run out for a different reason?
You don't know. That's what I'm saying. That's
I feel like
your
this
fault here.
topic has gotten to the point where we're just like, I have
Yeah.
no idea, and I'm not
It got
educated
weird.
And
enough
that's
to even.
that is to me why I think there isn't like a clear definition for this topic. I have been in situations as a priest where there was uh euthanasia that happened and nobody questioned it. It was acceptable. But then there are other times when it's like, no, absolutely not. So it just depends. It really just depends.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I think we should end it there because I
Yeah.
I have
That topic is actually so different.
yeah,
We're gonna
like
play what
bro,
if
it's
all day.
gotten bigger like as we were talking.
I just
Like,
I got one question before we cut it off. Wait, you want like cut off the whole episode?
no, no.
Oh,
Oh.
my fault. I just have one itching question. That's it. That's it.
Oh,
If you ask about give up like
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
not right now.
Okay.
Get to it.
We'll
I was
do
gonna
it
say
later.
that's like, yeah, that's one of those
To live?
conversations.
Yes, we can switch.
Okay.
Good
So
one.
what's wrong with telling a little white lie? If I make a joke right now and I like lie just to make you laugh, am I sinning because I'm technically lying?
Kind of want to hear you guys first because I'm really opinionated about this one.
I have a question. What do y'all think if like someone comes up to you and you're like, "Oh, do you think my outfit looks good?" And then the answer is like, "No, like I don't think it looks good," and you tell them yes. Like that's a little white lie.
So what is lying then?
I feel like a
Not telling
lie.
the
Not
absolute
telling the truth. Yeah.
I feel like a lie is deceiving.
Okay,
Oh, we does not agree.
that's different.
Have you got
Okay.
wait?
Is that can you be deceiving and tell the truth?
Oh,
Yeah, the way you word the
I
truth.
don't know, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
You
It's-
can
there- Yeah.
I feel like telling a white lie, like as in the sense of like a joke,
Hmm.
is not a sin.
I mean, does everyone in the room know you're joking? Like, if I lie, like, oh, I have a Ferrari, everyone knows I don't have
Yeah.
a Ferrari, right? But if it's like, if I have to build more lies off the single lie I did, then that's when it becomes a problem. Because now you're trying to like change your whole life, kind of say, or like change the image that you give off.
Yeah.
Like, if I had just moved here, and I was like, oh yeah, I have a 6-story house, I drive this car, I have this. Like, everyone in the room is gonna be like, oh, that guy's pretty cool. Like, he's like more fortunate than us, blah 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 blah, you know. And then I'm gonna have to keep that lie going until eventually someone figures out the truth. But if it's like a white, like if I'm already established, people already know who I am. Yeah, they don't know everything about my life, but it's like it's very obvious that I'm like joking and I'm not being 100% serious, then I don't see a problem with that.
I mean, also, there's like multiple ways of lying. Like, you don't have to say, "Oh, I got a Ferrari and I got these nice clothes." If you even like your Instagram feed, if you post with a bunch of cool cars, a yacht in the back, a plane in the back, it's
No, I
that's
mean,
also lying about a rich
Hmm.
why
lifestyle.
why is that lying though? Like, because
I
this
mean, if that's like your whole Instagram, that's what I'm saying.
if it's my Instagram is just like picture or moments in my life.
I-
No, hold on. Instagram is just moments in my life that I felt I should share with the world. Okay. If I take like if I go on a trip or something, I'm on a cruise. I paid for that cruise. I worked to be on that cruise. If I have the what's it called? If I wanna like show people that I'm on a cruise, what's wrong with that? I'm just kind of yeah, I'm kind of showing off my accomplishments, but I also like work to get there at
So
the same time.
that's one reason why people get online and have like social media. Like I feel like I'm old when I say this, but I was alive during the beginning of the internet. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so when that happened, the first like social media that came out was something called MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like nobody ever used their real name. Everyone always had like some sort of like cartoon as their profile picture. And everyone would always have a different personality. Like the internet and social media specifically was just for like having an alternate personality and
Okay.
like having fun with it. It wasn't until Facebook started that people started actually using the social media as an extension of who they are.
Yeah.
Right? So like you lived your life, you went on a cruise, you went on vacation. I'm gonna share that on Facebook. I'm gonna share that on my social media.
Okay.
That's a new thing that happened, but there are people out there that use social media to this day the way that they use MySpace back in the day, which is like this has nothing to do with me. This is like a
Yeah.
different person. And it's just fun to, it's like a video game. You
Yeah.
made a little character and this is my character I'm working on, you know?
Yeah.
So that's your way of using social media, but there's other people that use it differently.
I feel like the majority what?
That's not lying.
Is it?
I mean, if I'm no, no,
It's
if
fun.
I'm impersonating someone else, like isn't impersonating lying because I'm lying about who I am and
Okay.
I have the screen behind me.
I just looked up the definition of lying.
Okay.
It says
Is that like Google?
Yes, it's Google. An intentionally false statement, and then under it, it says, "Used with reference to a situation involving deception or founded on a mistaken impression."
All right, impersonating is
Deception.
technically deception because I'm
Yeah.
deceiving you of who I am.
It's not. Isn't it?
Do you guys want a Bible story where someone lied and it wasn't a problem?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
There's a really famous story in the book of Joshua, about a harlot named Rahab. You guys know what a harlot is?
No.
Harlot is a prostitute. Okay.
Okay.
So her name was Rahab. So Joshua was tasked by God to take this army and go and like knock out Jericho. Okay, just wipe the city. And so Joshua decided, I'm gonna send two spies into Jericho because Jericho had this huge wall. They couldn't see what was the city actually looked like. I'm gonna send two spies to spy out the city to see, like, get an idea of what are we dealing with here, right? Before we actually start our attack. They go into the city and they get caught as spies.
Mhm.
So they start booking it. They're running. And then somebody opens their door and says, "Psst, come in."
Mm.
And so then it was Rahab the harlot. So they go and hide in her home. And then the authorities come and knock on her door and say, "Hey, we heard someone, like, we saw someone ran by here. They're fugitives. They're under arrest, whatever. They're spies, X, Y, and Z." She was like, "Yeah, you just missed them. They went that way." It's a lie.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Um, then the two spies escape from her window successfully, and then they go and plunder the city and everything, and they do God's will, whatever. Rahab's name shows up in the genealogy of Jesus Christ in one of the Gospels.
What's the genealogy?
Genealogy is like the family line,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So like starting from Adam all the way down, right?
Mhm.
Or
Okay.
starting from your like great 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 Giddu all the way down.
The family
Rahab
tree.
shows up.
Mm.
She was mentioned that's her only part of the Old Testament. That's her only story. She lied, and
But
she was deemed worthy by the apostles to be mentioned as a part of the genealogy of the Son of God.
yeah,
That means that there's nothing wrong with what she did, and there's no problem with it. So why was that not a sin?
is it? Wait, is it that there's nothing wrong with what she did, or it's she did it, but she was also forgiven for it?
Is
There's
it her
nothing in the text, in the entire Bible, or in the writings outside the Bible that I've seen that say that no, what she did was wrong, but God forgave her somehow.
is it her intentions?
Yeah.
Yeah, her intention was to hide them.
Yeah,
No,
could
no,
I
I meant, like, is that
That-
like
Oh, is
yeah.
that what made it okay?
Yeah.
could I say something?
Yeah, go
Could
ahead.
be. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say, I know there's two verses that I have. Ephesians is saying, "Therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another," which is saying like we shouldn't lie to people.
Mm-hmm.
But also in James 4:17 it says, "Therefore, to him who knows how to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." So I feel like her
Oh
lying,
my god.
That's
trying to do good for that person or those two people, maybe that's why, like, I don't know, it
Well,
kind of goes into each other.
yeah,
Wait.
so the question that I think that I help that I teach in order to help people understand this, and this is how I was taught about what lying is and these little white lies and things. Who is being served? Just like we were talking about an abortion. Who's being served?
Yourself.
She was
When
serving
you most when
people.
most people lie, like especially when we were kids growing up, like your parents come to you and be like, "You take out the trash." "Yeah, mom." Right? And it's like it was a lie. Who was being served in that? Why did you lie?
Myself, because I was lazy
Yeah, you were trying to avoid what?
Conflict.
doing work.
You were trying to avoid getting in trouble.
Mhm.
Because if she found out I didn't take the trash out, I would get grounded. Right? Like they'd take my device, they'd take whatever. So you see how that works? So I have realized from my own experience, this is not like the church speaking. This is Abuna Musa from his own experience taking confessions in the youth in the church. There are two reasons why people lie. Because they're either afraid of something happening if they don't lie. This is why people cheat in school, by the way. It's just another form of lying. They're afraid of failing their tests. Okay. So you're afraid of the consequences if you tell the truth. Or the other reason is they're trying to present themselves in a certain image, which is why some people will lie online and be like, look at all my Lambos. And they just like are in front of a rental car place with all the Lambos. You know? So who's being served in both of those situations?
Yourself.
Myself.
Yourself.
Yourself. That's why it's a sin. It doesn't better anything in the world. It doesn't better you. It just keeps you away from like falling into getting in trouble or whatever. And it also just makes your ego bigger by like trying to make yourself look good or whatever. Unless you guys can think of other scenarios, but those are always the two reasons why people lie today. Does that kind of make sense? So how do you know white lies are a sin? Who's being served?
Yourself, if you're serving
Yeah, yeah.
yourself. Okay.
To me, like I told you guys I was really opinionated about this because I think this is one of the most normalized sins, and it has the deepest effect that we don't even realize is happening. What I have noticed, okay, just from my understanding here, the more a person has little white lies, Baba Shenouda used to always say they're like little foxes. Okay? How much time do we have? Good. Okay. So they're like they're little foxes. You guys know how a fox eats plants? How do
Mhm.
they eat plants?
Off the ground, I don't know.
Oh no, like there's a way they do it.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
I thought you meant that they
Do you
eat
know
it.
how fox like travel? They don't just run on top of the ground sometimes. What do they do also?
But
They
they have,
dig in the ground.
yeah.
They go in the ground. Do you know that they will eat the roots of a plant? The
Mm.
roots that you can't see. So you can have the most beautiful garden of food, okay? And you're over here just like being a good gardener and you're watering all the plants and everything. Then one day you wake up, they're all dead, but they're not eaten.
Mhm.
What happened?
The
Maybe there's a fox in your garden who came and ate the roots. That's what little white lies are. They're these little tiny things that they look like foxes are so cute. Like they look like they can't do anything. But then they can slowly behind the scenes cause something to happen. So the deeper thing that
I'm
we
so
have to
sorry.
thank you. The deeper thing that we have to be worried about with like little white lies is not just is it a sin or not? It's that if I have a habit of lying all the time, do you guys know what happens to a person? They start to lie to themselves. Whenever you meet somebody who like you can kind of feel like they're not genuine in like everything that they are. Like you just feel like you don't get the same person. By the way, this is a very big problem for a lot of youth in the church. There's a lot of people who they are really Christian and genuinely trying to live a good relationship with God just on Sunday morning. Then once they go home, once they get water splashed on them from Abuna, like it's like something they turn on their other personality. And that like we people judge them and say they're being fake. But what's really happening there is that they got used to my opinion, they got used to lying. From the experience of like what I've seen in serving the youth in the church, there's a big correlation between people who struggle with lying and people who struggle to be faithful on other days of the week except Sunday. It's like almost always connected to each other's, and I don't think that's just a coincidence. So I would avoid these little white lies like they are the plague, because they are just the beginning, the seed that grows into something like you being not genuine in who you are. And the more not genuine you are, the more you start to believe these lies that you tell. If that kind of makes sense.
So you don't think in Rahab's case it was okay?
I do think it was okay for her because it wasn't serving herself. However,
Oh.
because that wasn't a white lie. What makes a lie, and by definition a sin, is not what you saw, what you read on Google.
Mhm. Not the deception.
It's that it's deception for the sake of selfishness. That's what makes it a sin.
Okay.
Right? It's like I'm trying to avoid getting in trouble, or I'm trying to present myself as somebody that I'm not.
Mhm.
You know, it's like no, be real, don't be fake, be genuine in who you are, because God made you, and God made you perfect the way you are. You have weaknesses, own up to your weaknesses. It's okay,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then don't fear failure, because that's what leads to people sinning. So I think Rahab's situation was not a sin; it was her being wise,
Mm.
if anything.
Okay.
Yes. Like, and by the way, I think you mentioned the scenario where like someone comes up to you and says like, "Hey, you like my outfit?"
Mhm.
And then you're like, "Well, I don't want to lie. I'll give you my opinion. If you know that it's going to like burn the relationship that you have with this person, and you know that it's going to help let them feel loved, and that they aren't in a situation where they need to hear you say this outfit sucks, just tell them, yeah, it's nice. And then you just ask them like, so why do you like the outfit? And then just have a conversation about it.
Okay.
Yeah. What else?
Bishoy had a
Okay.
question.
What was that?
I said Bishoy had a question.
Okay.
And ask.
So okay. So everyone you talk to in a Christian belief, whether any denomination of Christian would probably say gambling is a sin. Okay. And they most times bring up the verse where they talk about the love of money is the root of all evil.
Hmm.
Okay. But why is gambling a sin? And at what point does gambling kind of differentiate from other sources, like apart from like just getting a regular 9 to 5, okay? Whether it's investing or all this stuff, right?
Yeah. That's the
Like,
biggest one is investing in stocks. What
yeah,
people say is like,
yeah,
how's
like
that
my
not
my
gambling?
biggest argument is like I can't tell you if Netflix stock is gonna go up $50, but I can tell you if LeBron's gonna drop 20 in a game.
Mm.
You know? Like like, at what point is it gambling and at what point is it investing?
So, I think I'm gonna tell you how I think about this, and you guys can probably tell from the way I've been answering these questions. My first question is, well, who's being served here? Now, you should serve yourself. The commandment from Christ is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So you got to take care of yourself. I'm not saying don't make money.
Mhm.
Um, However, gambling, we'll use the extreme of the example of gambling in a casino to make it
Okay.
clear why that's a sin.
Okay.
What do you do at a casino? You put in money to get money back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the hope is like out of random chance, or even if there's a little bit of skill, let's say it's like poker or something or blackjack or whatever it is, you're trying to make more money back. Okay.
Mhm.
What's the end goal? To make more money.
Yeah.
When you have an influx of money coming at you, how can you say like, no, I'm strong enough and I won't fall for greed?
No, that's true, but, like,
Follow
with
me?
that same scenario, like,
You
why
can
would
do
I
that at work too.
well, yeah, why would I
Yeah,
fight for, like, a higher paying job, or why would I work harder to get a higher paying job?
exactly. That's kind of a good point.
Yeah.
So there are times when I'm not saying that getting a raise at work is gambling. It's
Mhm.
not. But there are certain things in life, actions that can lead to the love of money,
Yeah.
which is now a sin. So it's like, how close do I want to get to the cliff before I'm now like about to fall off kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if for you, it's tailored to the person, by the way.
Mhm.
If for you, you have this sensitivity to money where it's like you get any money, you're just like dopamine's rushing, you're just like really into it, then you have to be a little bit more strict on yourself, right? Versus somebody who's right next to you may not have that same relationship with money.
Mm.
So that means for you, you would have to like not even invest in stocks. You would not have to go for that raise. You have to be just okay with what you have, unless it's a necessity thing.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who like they can handle it, they're not going to fall for that money. That's not their weakness. Then they can go for not gambling in a casino, but maybe like getting a raise and so on.
Mm.
But there's another reason why gambling is a sin.
Mhm.
Gambling requires somebody else to lose.
True. But isn't that the same with investing, though?
Is it? Ah,
Because, like, okay, I'll bring up, like, options trading, for example.
okay.
If I do an option and the stock goes up,
Sorry,
I
what is that? Sorry.
okay, I'm not the best. This is why I wish Marco was here, right?
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure options trading is like you forecast. Okay, so say Netflix stock is at 250 right now. You forecast it's gonna hit at 300.
Okay.
Okay, so you buy it at 250 right now, and the second it hits 300, you sell immediately. Okay, if it keeps going up, you win a lot of money because you bought it at a very cheap price. But
Mhm.
if it goes down, you lose a lot of money because you bought like a large amount at 250. So say it goes down to 200.
Okay.
Okay. So it's either gonna go down to 200 or go up to 300. Either way, you're gonna win or lose a lot of money at the expense of someone else.
Wait, but how is that at
Who's
the
the
expense?
someone else? Netflix?
Say it
Is
again.
it someone else?
No, it's like hold on, what was I saying?
Does the
Okay, that was
com
a bad example.
does the company does like the stock you're investing in at any point benefit from you investing in them?
Yeah, because now they'll have my money.
And
Like
that's not gambling. See how that works? If it's
that's true.
mutually beneficial,
Okay,
then I don't need to prey on the downfall of somebody else. But
that's true.
gambling in a casino, you're directly winning money that someone else just lost.
What if it's
So
like
you're by dissociation praying for someone's downfall.
That is
That
true.
that builds a wall between you and your brother, you know?
Mm,
And that's why it's a sin.
mm.
Do you think that lottery tickets count as gambling?
Yeah. Same thing.
Mhm.
So like listen, I know people personally who suffer from this addiction from gambling. It is an addictive behavior. And they are like they're completely lost. Like they could easily go out and get a job, but they prefer to beg for money right now.
Mm.
you
It's their
think it's the
preference.
addiction that's the problem?
Yes.
Not
Oh no,
like
sorry. The addiction is the result of the problem.
so you
It
don't
leads
think
to
like
addiction.
so you,
So like
okay,
getting
maybe
a
that was a
lottery
bad
ticket
question.
just one time might not be a sin.
No, it's the act in itself is not a sin, but like that's why I'm saying it's not the right question to ask. Is like, is it healthy or is it not healthy for me?
Hmm.
Is it going to actually benefit in any way for me or not? And if it's like it could help you,
But it has a lot
okay.
more chance.
But if it also could hurt you, then like why take the risk, you know?
Okay, question. What if you like win the what's the one? Mega
It's
Millions?
like if you win the lottery,
That one.
why can't the church accept it? Is that your question?
Yeah, what if you win it and you give it to the church?
This is a tradition thing, by the way.
Oh,
Mm.
really?
There's a church father that says there's only like three ways as a Christian, that you should make money.
Mhm.
And I can't remember the quote exactly, but one of them is it was St. John Chrysostom. I remember who it was. But he said that if you make money by moving something from one place to another, that's acceptable.
What does that
I
mean?
know it's very specific because it's like you put in work, you put in the labor,
Okay.
right? So he's like, if it's you're relocating something,
Mhm.
okay, that's an acceptable form of work in some way or form. If you are inventing something new, that's acceptable. If you are bettering someone in any way, that's acceptable. There's another one I just can't remember, but like someone took that quote basically and looked at it as like that's what Jesus says.
Hmm.
And so they took it too literally, but um it's a tradition that we have in the church where we stray away far from things that could lead to sin. And so that's why I would usually advise it's like sports betting, for example. Um I can see the rational logical argument as to why it's not a sin
Mm,
by that definition, but like how can I sit here and be like, yeah, go for it when I know so many people who they do
it's good.
sports betting and they lose their entire like life savings.
That's true.
It's like why risk it, you
Like,
know?
okay, I'll give like a personal example. Freshman year of high school, my not high school, sorry, college. My suite mates, you know, they got me on like Price Picks, and I think you've probably heard of Price Picks. I don't know.
No, I haven't.
It's like where you bet the over under on like
Yeah.
over
There's like
under
a
on
million of those now. Yeah.
yeah, right. And they got me on that. I started winning, and then I was like, it felt good, right?
Mm.
And then I started losing a little bit, and then I cut it there.
Mm.
I cut the cord right there, right? I didn't do any
Your losses, yeah.
yeah. And then now I like because it's like to me at the time it was a little bit fun, right? But I also understand the dangers that come with it. Um, right now, like last Super Bowl, I put a little bet on the Super Bowl. It was harmless, $15.
Mhm.
It was like a stupid part. It was not parlay, yeah, a stupid parlay, and like I felt like it caused a lot of excitement to the game. I ended up losing. I didn't win anything, but like after the loss, I didn't feel like I needed to bet more or anything. At that point, is it
It was
like
controlled, yeah.
yeah, it's kinda, like,
Okay.
controlled. At that point, is it, like 'cause I've kind of essentially, like, taken out the addictive behavior
It's
at
not that
some point.
what makes it addictive is dependency on it. So
Yeah.
if you use it as your source of income,
No, no, no,
that's
no.
a problem.
Yeah, it's just
But if
like
it's
a
like every once in a while, just to
it's like a
like
for fun thing, you know?
it's no different than me being like, hey, I bet you that I can like toss my shoe and hit that wall right now.
Yeah,
And then you're like, all right, bet, what do you want to bet?
yeah,
And I'm like, I don't know, you can like shave my head. Right? It's like,
yeah,
how is that any different? Is it
yeah,
just because it's money that it's a sin? No, it's the idea of like I'm addicted to the gambling nature of
yeah.
gambling.
Okay.
It's like the what if it happens, what if it doesn't kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that makes sense.
So as long as you don't fall for that becoming like this source or of dependency,
Mm,
that's the biggest thing to avoid,
okay.
you know?
And then with what you said earlier with the it comes at the expense of other people,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know, this kinda like this light just chimed in my head, but I didn't make the neural connection at all, like, this is just throwing it out. Isn't technically like, say I go work a 9 to 5, right, at X company,
Mm.
since monopolies are illegal in the United States, technically isn't the result of me putting in effort in this company hurting our competitor? So that would be coming at the expense of the competitor?
It is, but you are not directly hurting the competitor. You're just there to like provide for the company, and the company in turn provides for you. It's like
Yeah.
it's a mutual transaction,
Mhm.
right? And so you can successfully feel like, all right, I'm not connected to the competitive nature of this.
Okay, yeah.
This is, by the way, I'm not going to open up this argument because that's probably for another episode you guys are going to go through. But this is how I feel also about the whole like, oh, I don't shop at Target because of what they stand for.
Yeah.
It's like, remember when Starbucks was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
people said that they supported Israel or something like that,
Yeah.
and they funded them for the war against Palestine.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, I'm writing off Starbucks coffee,
Mm.
and I understand the logic of it, but I also don't understand it at the same time because I my coffee cup is not killing someone.
Mm.
If somebody in the company is choosing to provide resources to kill someone,
Yeah.
how am I accountable for their sin?
That's on them.
That kind of makes
Like
sense.
like what you did was just a transaction where like in any regular day it would be used to like I don't know like uplift the company, but they
Right,
decided to use that monetary value for instead of its intended purpose
right.
for a purpose that is sinful.
Yeah.
And at that point you're not liable for it. It's the person that used it,
But
right?
if you
But
know
if it's
that that's where it's gonna go, isn't it technically?
if it's done in protest as a sense of like because the protest might wake up the person or the group to stop this behavior that I don't agree with the behavior, right? But if I'll do that, then okay, but I'm not gonna just like stop myself from like buying their product unless it's for the protest. If that kind of makes sense.
Hold on,
Does
say
that
that
make
one more
sense?
time.
So the idea is that like I don't think that we should feel guilty because that's how people make you feel. I was in church one
Yeah.
time and this kind of happened. I'm not gonna go there. I was sorry. There when you start to buy the products of the company that you don't agree with, okay, there's a disconnect between the product and the product and the customer, and then the thing you don't agree with. There
Mm.
is a big gap between that. When we connect them, okay, what can I do about this? If protesting buying the product directly affects it, okay, there is a clear connection there. If it doesn't affect it, then I don't think it's healthy to be like throwing that at people. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah.
Like if you went and got Starbucks when that whole thing was happening, and I was like, how dare you? Like, how could you drink Starbucks? You're killing people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that. That's not okay. That's not healthy protest, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was my understanding of it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it-
Okay, let's. I'm gonna
Next.
ask a question. And I know you don't like the "is it a sin," but that's how I
No,
roll.
it's okay. Ask it. It's okay.
Is it okay? This has been an argument also between us. Is it a sin to open a liquor store?
Wait.
Oh,
First, can we start with is
Yeah.
drinking a sin and is getting
Okay,
drunk
okay,
like
sure.
I
Let's
different?
start
see.
with that. And where's the line between those two? Like, is
Hmm.
drinking and getting drunk
I feel like the line between drinking and getting drunk is when you start like losing sight of where you are, what you're doing,
control?
letting control go basically, and like losing any motor functions. People
So it
get
depends
drunk
on your
different.
tolerance.
What was that?
Yeah,
It depends on your tolerance then.
yeah.
But so it's the moment you lose control of yourself that makes it.
That makes it that you get drunk. That's what I'm thinking. I don't
Mm.
know. That's just my
I don't know.
guess, personally.
I
I
feel
don't
like
like
it's
to.
intention slightly.
Yeah, I don't
Like
like
So
to use the whole
I mean,
thing as
yeah,
like how
drinking.
far can I go until
become
I like until I
that's the
get drunk.
idea.
Yeah,
Like the how far can I go mentality is what I think we need to avoid.
yeah.
So for that reason, you'll hear the sentiment in the church is that alcohol is a sin. But theologically and technically, it is not. You want proof of that? What do we use for the communion in the
Wine.
church?
One, yeah.
Where you are drinking alcohol. Like it is not a sin by nature. Like alcohol intrinsically is not a sin. You'll find stories early in the Desert Fathers where monasteries on feast days would celebrate by the monks having a glass of wine together.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like this is not supposed to be seen as so taboo. I honestly believe it's a kind of a leaking of the Islamic like influence in Egypt into the culture of the Christian church, because this was never a problem in the early church. It was always the drunkenness of it, the
Yeah.
attachment that I have to alcohol that made it sinful. But because of how quickly you can become an alcoholic today, with just how like the reachability, is that the word? The like access,
Accessibility.
accessibility. Thank you. Accessibility of alcohol today for people who are even under 21, which is the legal age. By the way, the age is not what matters. It's more of how it
Yeah.
affects you spiritually.
Yeah.
Okay. But the accessibility of it for all ages and the effect that it can have on you and the amount of stress that we are in the Western world, which makes running to this quick medication be so enticing and exciting. For this reason, the church usually teaches and advises that you should avoid it as if it is a sin.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
However, like I can say confidently that I know people who have heart problems, for example, and doctors will tell them have a glass of red wine because there are certain chemicals in red wine that are good for the heart, right? For someone who has heart disease. You think I'm going to go to them and be like, "No, it's a sin?" No,
Mhm.
because they're not using it for the function of like
Getting
sin.
drunk.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Just like how we don't use wine in the church for the function of sin. We use it turns into the body of or the blood of Christ.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't say is it a sin or not. It's more of like how's it being used?
So if it wasn't there to benefit them, like in the sense of their heart, if
Hmm.
they were just drinking it as in like fun, like if we're all 21 and we're just sitting together and we're like, oh, everybody have a drink.
Hmm.
Is that a sin or does it, oh, okay, I don't like that word.
No, I
So
think
I
that.
understand what you're saying. So you know the famous story is the wedding of Cana of Galilee when Christ turned the water into wine.
Yeah.
I have heard people run through circles logically to try and prove Jesus didn't drink. There is no proof that he didn't.
Mm.
There is no proof. Like I'm willing to be corrected, honestly.
I've
If
also
you guys,
heard that people said like that wine was an alcoholic.
I don't know
I've
how like that wine wasn't, but every other wine that also was. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
I've
I've
heard that.
actually had a person that told me water was so dirty back then that they preferred to drink wine because the water was so dirty and led to
Could
disease.
have been. It could have been, but there was Like, remember the comment that was used in that gospel of like the person who said, "Wait, you've been saving the good wine in the back?
Yeah.
And let them be.
Can you let us have the bad wine first?"
Yeah.
So that means that there was an expectation of wine, not just because maybe of like the water, but because of the celebration itself, right?
Yeah.
So I sorry, what was the question you're asking?
Like
She's saying it's like
drinking together is like
Oh,
not
and
good.
celebration.
Like
Yeah.
if you were to
Sure,
get
yeah.
drunk on that, would that become the issue?
If it's a celebration,
Yeah.
okay, I have seen it where it's done in a healthy way,
Uh-huh.
and there's nothing wrong with it. However, I always defer to God, ask your father of confession, and go by what is the community you're a part of. If you're in a family, in a community, in a church parish with a father of confession who all are against it, like it's no longer about the alcohol at that point. It's now about like how am I going to affect my brother or sister,
Yeah.
or father and mother, but I have to speak honestly. I was ordained to serve you guys, okay? So I do not like teaching the wrong thing. I give advice, but I'm going to teach you the right thing. Alcohol is not a sin. Having it celebratorily is not a sin. Historically, that was done. The attachment you have to it makes it sinful. Makes it sinful. But I always be wise. Don't be like, well, Abuna said, because that's not the goal.
So would you say that's like the same as like smoking? If somebody like smokes, like
No,
you know
because
that
that directly hurts your body. Alcohol won't hurt your body in moderation.
so smoking is a sin because it hurts your body.
Yeah, the lungs were not designed by God to have smoke within them. So
Mhm.
you are directly putting a foreign object into your lungs, which damages the lung cells, which leads to eventual like lung cancer if it's habitual and so on. But so that because it is directly harming you, this is where I can pull out the verse and say, your body is the temple of God.
Mhm.
Why do that? You know what I mean?
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. Do
This is
y'all
perfect time for
okay.
your
Do you want to go into like okay,
question.
so is it a sin? Everyone, I want everyone to answer. Is it a sin to open a liquor store?
So to your question, the answer I think is yes, it is a sin. And my reasoning behind that is because in the Bible it says to love your neighbor as yourself. And
Mhm.
if you open up a liquor store, I feel like you're opening up an opportunity for someone to fall into sin, get drunk, and that leads to even like more sins.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so I feel like you're not really loving your neighbor if you're allowing them to do like are you going to put a limitation and be like no you're done drinking? No, you're not. So I feel like opening up that liquor store, you're opening up that opportunity for them to go through that whole course of sin,
What
which
if someone says, "Oh, they're gonna get the money anyway. People drink. There's gonna like if it's not from me, it's from someone else. So they're gonna get the money."
Can I
I
counter
mean the
something
money.
real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Like
The
I'm
liquor,
saying like
liquor.
when you sell the liquor, you're getting money. That's the only reason
Yeah.
you wanna like
Can I can I
right?
can I counter with something real quick?
Yeah.
yeah.
Abuna said at the beginning of the podcast something about how when we were talking about abortion, he said the baby is not responsible for the sins of his father, and the same for us. If I sell someone liquor, I am not responsible for his sins. And liquor itself isn't the sin; it's the getting drunk
But
from the liquor. So I don't know what he's gonna use it for. He could take it, go celebrate with his family for a promotion, and drink controllably and not get drunk, which isn't a sin.
o- okay,
So
How do
me
you know
selling
he's
him
gonna
the
do
liquor,
that?
like different
What
stories that can
ifs? Yeah.
happen in a liquor store.
I know, but me selling him liquor, I mean, like Abuna said, I'm not responsible
So you're saying it's not a
for
sin.
his
Like
sin.
you don't think it's
I don't think it's a sin.
I mean,
okay.
with the argument she said,
Yeah.
right? If I'm a doctor and I open up my own clinic, when that have like I would have the ability to like perform abortions.
Like an abortion clinic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wait. Never
I
mind.
mean, honestly, no,
Stop that. Stop
because
that. Stop that.
that depends. That like I'm saying, that depends on what you're opening. Like some people, as like the liquor store, how we agree drinking is a sin. But if I open, for example, a vape shop or a hookah store, that's a sin because we agreed that smoking is a sin. It's hurting the temple of God that God gave you.
Okay, but do you know how like Abuna said off air when we were talking about tattoos? It's how like um
How your community,
yes, your
How it
community.
affects the
Yes,
people.
how it affects the
Like you
people
have to
around
be
you.
considerate of
How do you know that when someone goes to buy a bottle, how do you know they're gonna use it moderately?
how do you know that they won't use it moderately?
Exactly.
They
We
may-
don't.
Exactly.
We
So
don't.
why risk
So
it?
why risk it?
So that's what I think that's what they're saying. This is a risk analysis, right?
Yes.
They're just trying to analyze like is the risk worth it or not.
Hmm.
Um,
I think there's other forms of income, but I understand that it's hard to get a job. I'm not saying like, I
can I
don't
I
know.
can I
think you
give
guys are
a
arguing different things. You're arguing about the monetary portion of it.
How about is it
She's arguing.
yeah
I know she's arguing about like
the
the I
spiritual implication?
yeah, the idea of like if I give you a bottle of alcohol, is that a sin? Because I'm technically
Will
helping
I
you.
be judged by God for that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I would just, I don't know.
I think it's important that we look at this from like real life examples because a lot of us probably know people in the church who let's say they work at a gas station There's a lot of members in the church and all churches that they own gas stations, work at gas stations, they're clerks at gas stations, whatever. What do they sell at gas stations?
Vape,
Cigarettes.
They
cigarettes.
sell, yeah, lots of substances that end up being sins,
Yeah.
right? And being abused. And can you make the argument that they are endorsing that behavior in a person?
No.
Exactly. Now, what if you were in a situation where you just immigrated from Egypt and you're trying to get a job, and the only job available to you, and you have a family that you need to feed, and you're the only source of income right now?
Mm-hmm.
The only job available to you right now is working at that gas station. Is it a sin?
No.
I don't think
No.
so.
As long as it's not done in the sense of like, I'm purposely doing this when I could be doing something else, then that means you're not caring about the risk. You haven't analyzed the risk, like we said. So, you're all right, by the way, in the scenarios you brought up, but scenario by scenario. It just depends. If you are able to have other sources of income, you should consider other sources of income and don't risk it, right? Like
Yeah.
you're saying. But if you have no other source of income, then you have to provide for your family first, not sit here and worry selfishly about like, oh, I'm worried about being judged by this or so on and so forth. It's like, what if your family suffers because you're over here trying to be righteous?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's just nuanced. So it's
Okay.
not a sin, but it is a sin at the same time. It just depends on the situation.
Okay. What about one more thing? What about cussing?
Mm.
I mean,
This one should be obvious, right, guys?
yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
know,
feel
we know
like
that.
singers instead.
But
You guys know.
here's like a little.
So go ahead.
Sure, go
No,
ahead.
no, good, good.
No, I'd rather have you explain why, so this makes sense.
Well, like, why do you guys think cussing's a sin?
Not better.
Well, God gave us our body with we talked about this in Bible study. Was it James? Which one was it? Oh,
James
you
does
guys
talk
weren't
about the
there.
tongue.
It was James.
James
Yeah.
4, yeah. James 4 talks about the
We
tongue.
talked about how the tongue is a blessing from God. We should use it to glorify God,
And
and it's like a double-edged sword. We
can
should use
also
it
hurt, yeah.
for. So
Mm.
I feel like if God gave us this body, this temple to take care of and use wisely to praise Him, we should not use it to be hurting others or cursing other people.
As well as like he told us to love one another. And if you're cursing someone, I don't think that's loving them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
The argument against that is always like, it's only when I'm playing a video game, Abuna, and it's just like, I'm not cussing someone out. I'm just frustrated.
No, but like
Then it's that verse that's like do good. It's something about like doing good, and why do it if you're not gonna, I forgot what the verse is.
If you
Something
know,
like do good.
it's what I think you were reading before from James as well. It's if you know to do good and you don't do it, then it's a sin.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like I could have said something better,
yeah.
but instead I said something that was empty. Like there's no meaning behind.
And that relates earlier to what you said about habits. It was like
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
What if you get mad and you curse? And like getting mad isn't a sin because like Jesus himself was mad at
That's
the
just
temple.
yeah, but that's like lack of self-control. Like
Yeah. It's an impulse and
yeah.
it
Like
still leads to empty words coming out of your mouth. Christ himself says in the gospel that we're going to have to give an account for every idle word that we speak.
Mhm.
So idle does not mean like IDOL, like a statue, but
Mhm.
idle as in like, you know, when your car sits idle,
mm,
it's like it's sitting still, it's not doing anything. So that's the idea. It's like the words you're saying have to actually have an implication, an impact on a person. You don't have to give a sermon to everybody you walk around and talk to, but I mean, you can't just you shouldn't speak in a way that is empty,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, it's just a waste of time and air. Like you can't put the words back into your mouth. Once it's out there, it's out there.
I feel like our whole podcast episode today was like a lot of the sins were led by lack of self-control, like cussing, lust,
Well done. Good job.
drinking, smoking. I feel like at the end of the day, like we noticed that a lot of them depend on the situation. So self-control at the end of the day is what matters the most. That's what I'm seeing.
You're absolutely right. A lot of people talk about this in like when you read spiritual books and from like the church like the Orthodox understanding of things, we really think in like roots, right? We don't look at it as like is cussing a sin. We look at it as like, well, where'd the cussing come from?
Mhm.
You know, if a cussing came from anger, then don't worry about your cussing right now. Control your anger. The cussing will go away by itself. That's like how we tend to think as Orthodox Christians. And so I think you just kind of did that too. It's proof you're Orthodox. That, like you realize like everything's kind of rooted in self-control. I don't need to sit here and look at myself as a list of sins I got to work on. I need to like if you're going to cut down a tree, you don't start with the individual leaves.
Yeah, you cut
And
it
then the
down.
little branches. Yeah, you just go to the trunk. It's the same thing. Learn to control yourself and your cravings and have a mastery over yourself. And then you'll find it much easier to deal with these sins that we all struggle with. That's a good, like, all-encompassing way to put it.
There's one more question from the youth. All of these were from the youth, by the way. But
Sure.
uh, I guess this was kind of answered, but I guess I want to hear your opinions on it. Why is the word hell a cuss word when it's used in the Bible? مثلا if I say like what the insert blank. Why is
Yeah,
that?
actually,
It's the same. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, I just want to add on the, like some people, it's like how you said self-control. If I use the word hell to condemn someone to hell, like go to hell, that's a curse, and that's of course a sin. But if somebody uses it in like astonishment and like, well, actually, yeah, that's also like self-control. I say it now, but like if they use it like as in astonishment, they're like, oh my God, what the hell just happened or whatever, it would that like be counted just as a curse as well?
Is the
Was it?
word necessary?
No, so it'd be like a
So
self-control.
it's an idle word
Mhm.
and it's empty. It doesn't do anything.
I had
I could have asked the same question without saying.
like twice.
Sorry, what?
Oh, I was just gonna say I had this conversation with someone, and I asked them this question, and they were like, when you're saying what the insert
You
blank.
can say it. It's not you using it, and you're using it and it has a meaning. We're talking about it, so it's okay.
Okay, when you're
God isn't
saying
judging the English that we're speaking. I promise. That's not how.
when you're saying that, you're not saying because like hell is like separation from God. When you're saying what the hell, it's not like what the separation from God. You're
Yeah,
not saying it like that.
it's not using like.
You're not
okay,
using it like that. Yeah. So like,
so-
why use it when you can just look at Pookie, she's laughing at me. I mean,
No,
you're not using
It's a
it
really
like
good
that.
point, actually.
You're not saying
I
what
know.
man, what the separation from God.
I like that a lot, actually, because I think it's important. We have like we should be intentional with our speech.
Actually, I mean, speaking on that, if people say like, like people like replace words, like people that say,
Oh my
what the
gosh.
frick, oh my gosh, what the
Yeah.
heck, would that count as a sin? Because at the end of the day, like that word was still in the back of your mind a little bit.
That's a
Like,
good question.
Let me ask a different question to kind of answer this question.
okay,
If you had a perfect vocabulary, would you still say it? Like you knew every word that ever existed in the English language.
Yeah.
probably not.
Would you still say that like oh my gosh instead of oh my god?
I mean, if I knew,
I mean, actually,
Like would you have these replacement
but I feel like if I knew every word in the English language, I wouldn't say
Yep.
or like
Exactly.
literally.
I feel like I would still use it because our speech is influenced by the cultures around us, and a lot of people use it nowadays.
But what if you realize that like the words that you're saying, you're trying to like describe what you're thinking and feeling, right?
Yeah.
That's how we speak. We're describing what's going on the inside. Let's say I like walk and I stub my toe against the table, right? And I'm just like, oh, darn. It's a replacement word for the word damn, right?
Yeah.
Which means to be condemned. Okay?
Hmm.
Now, if I did that, but what just happened? I stubbed my toe on the table. It was painful and it hurt very badly, and the pain traveled up to my body, and it like frustrated me because I wasn't expecting it. It was shocking. You see all that description I just gave?
Hmm.
That's what we're really trying to do when we say, "Oh darn." We're just describing what happened, right? It's you're expressing what just went on. So if you had a lot of more like a higher vocabulary, sorry to say, like if we just had more a higher vocabulary, we would end up not cussing because we would be like, what's the point of this word? It doesn't mean anything. Like I know what I'm trying to say right now. You'd be more intentional with your speech.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense? Like you'll find people who have a higher vocabulary, they don't curse. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's because they realize I don't need to say this word. I know another word for what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
You know, you'll find that mostly kids who are younger will cuss a lot more than adults, and it is in factored in by the influence of the environment. You're right. When you get
Yeah.
into the workforce after college, like it's not very common to hear cussing, but you will every once in a while. But I think a little trick we can work on is be intentional with your words and just have a higher vocabulary. You know,
What's the website called for
what?
vocab? What's the website for vocab called that we used to use in English classes?
There's a website.
Oh, Membean.
Membi.
Yeah,
Membean.
What is
It's-
this?
use it
You don't know what Membi is?
No.
You just like learn words.
instead
Yeah.
of saying it. You know.
Not a sponsor.
But if they want to sponsor, we would. Well,
I mean,
I'm for sure getting on Membean later.
Okay.
Anyways, I have one. Wait, is that all? Because I have
Yeah.
one last question.
Mhm.
What is the unforgivable sin? Like, what does it mean? As in the Bible, it says the unforgivable sin is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. What exactly does that mean?
And then how do you know if you like have committed it?
so it's not an it that you can put on a calendar.
Oh.
That's the first thing we have to like get out of our heads because that causes so much anxiety for people. They freak out and they're just like, "Did I do it? I accidentally said I don't like God. Am I going to hell?"
I'm cooked.
And I like, we have to remember that that's not God is not that like unmerciful towards us.
Mhm.
That if he was that strict regarding the sentence that we say out loud, why isn't he like that all over the place in his relationship with us? So it's not about did I say something or is it a moment that I put on a calendar?
Mhm.
But it's a demeanor, it's a way of which you relate to God. So Saint Augustine, who is a fourth century church father, he has a very clear explanation of blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. He says that imagine that you are a person who has like sinned terribly, okay? And the church in her motherhood opens her arms to you to welcome you back into the church because what did your sin do? It broke you off from the church, right? That's separation from God language that we always say. So it broke you off, but the church is opening her arms and extending her arms out to you and inviting you by the grace of God to come back and fix this sin that you've committed, whatever it is, to be done with it. And it no longer has to be held against you. You're not what you sin. That's not your identity. And you decide to reject the invitation when you are being asked to be forgiven and someone wants to forgive you and it's the only place that was given the authority to forgive, which is the church. In this whole world you're not going to get forgiveness anywhere, guys. You guys know that.
Yeah.
The church is the only building where you will ever experience someone truly forgiving you and it's real, right? So that's being offered to you and you say no. That's blaspheming against the Holy Spirit. Why? Because the idea is you believed that God's forgiveness wouldn't do anything for you. It's that belief that's blaspheming against the Holy Spirit. In other words, to make it more simple, what is the unforgivable sin? It's when you believe that you cannot be forgiven. Is that clear?
Yes.
Mhm.
That's how it's always been understood in the history of the church. It's not like a moment, but it's more of like a demeanor of God can't actually help me. My sin is above God's love. Relax, it's the opposite.
Can you get out of that state though?
You can. But it's even when you
What makes it unforgivable though? Like if you can still get
because you're not accepting forgiveness. Think of it just logically, right?
okay.
It's that like what is the if I'm the only person that can hand you this cup of coffee
Mhm.
and you're rejecting the cup of coffee, okay? You're not going to get coffee. It's just that simple. I'm the only one that can give it to you.
Yeah.
Only God can forgive. Therefore, if I reject forgiveness from God,
Mhm.
and I can trick myself and be like, no, I'll forgive myself. No, I'll go and get forgiveness somewhere else. No, I don't even need forgiveness. I didn't do anything wrong. All that, that's all blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Because it's you believe that you couldn't be forgiven, so you rejected the invitation to be forgiven. That's why it's by nature called unforgivable. Because it's like you're not letting it happen.
Mhm.
It's not because God is so mad that he's not going to forgive that one thing. It's like he's so loving, but that's where you draw the line. Like that's not how God is.
Someone had told me that, like, if you've committed the unforgivable sin or not, is like no one's committed the unforgivable sin because you wouldn't care if you did. That sounds so silly. Like, I don't know. This
No, I don't
person
know.
told me that, and I don't know how to like think
I
about it.
think
But someone had said that. So.
I think people cannot care for different reasons.
Mhm.
I think if the reason is because you don't believe that it's possible to be like loved by God and that you don't really care to have God forgive you of your sin, like you just I don't care about sin. I'm going to sin all I want. That would be unforgivable. But you can quickly fix that by going to church and being forgiven. By going and saying like, "Well, I want to know." Let's say I'll give you a nuanced situation. Let's say that you have committed a sin and you're not convinced it's actually a sin. You think like this is not really a big deal, like the white lie or whatever it is. And then you have been hearing from Abuna for years, it's a sin, you gotta you gotta stop it. And you're just like, I get it, but I'm not gonna stop it because I'm not really convinced it's a sin. But you're genuinely trying to figure out is it a sin or not? You're still questioning. You still haven't committed the unforgivable sin because you're questioning.
Yeah.
The moment you finally accepted, like, خلاص, I'm not going to try to be forgiven anymore. Okay, that means that you're unforgivable. Not because God, but because you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
That.
So I want you guys to like استريح نفسهم, like like relax your minds. You're not committing this sin unless you actively reject God all the time. We reject God out of weakness when we sin, yes. But you're not actively trying to go against God. You're falling for weaknesses. So I'm not trying to say be nice and merciful on yourself because that can go into an extreme, obviously, but don't over like worry about this unforgivable sin. you'll know when you're committing the unforgivable sin because you'll have Abuna chasing after you and the servants in the church chasing after you, and you'll know. You'll know it's happening.
This might be a stupid question, but like on like um I guess the hierarchy is like the levels. Is that one like in the eyes of God, is that one like Kalos, that's the top?
Hierarchy of what?
Like levels of sins. Like
Oh,
I know that there's no hierarchy like in the eyes of God between sins, between like lying and adultery.
there's two ways of understanding hierarchy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of them is so like all sins lead to separation from God. We all
Mm-hmm.
know that.
Yes.
So all sins have the same final result, but not all sins have the same results with people, with the world that I was entrusted with in this life that I was given,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like if I sin against my wife, for example, and I like get mad at her and yell at her or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
okay? How's that gonna affect her? It's gonna make her upset.
Yeah.
It's gonna put her down. She's gonna lose like her self-confidence. She might get so upset that I got upset at her. Then she'll go to work and then get upset at someone at work. And then that's just gonna be a snowball effect and just get worse and worse. Then someone will go home and get mad at their dog, and the dog will get mad at something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like sin does have this environmental effect, but how it affects a person depends. Sexual immorality, St. Paul says, affects you mostly. If it mostly affects you, the personal person,
Mm-hmm.
whereas sin in other ways can affect the people around you. So there isn't a hierarchy per se, but there is different ways that sin can affect, if that makes sense.
But I'm saying like in regards to like the unforgivable sin,
Oh,
is like is that one like
I guess if you want to
is
put
there
it in a
hierarchy in that
hierarchy,
way?
it's not an official hierarchy, but if you want to think of it that way, it can be seen that way.
Like in God's eyes.
No, in God's eyes, there's
Like if I commit the well, I don't know. If like if I lie, is that different than committing the unforgivable sin?
very different. Very different. Because when you lie, you can feel bad about it later if you know the nature of lying and the weight of the sin and you know the love of God and X, Y, and Z, right? Whereas the unforgivable sin is like you are knowing all those things about God, but you would rather something else. You'd rather not be forgiven. So I guess in that sense, it is bigger or higher in the hierarchy.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Sorry, I want to ask. So the unforgivable sin is just like basically not confessing.
it's not confessing because some people cannot confess for multiple reasons. Some people can struggle with the concept of confession.
Mm-hmm.
Some people they get real nervous talking to Abuna. So like that could be another reason they're not confessing. It could be that they're afraid of their own sins. They don't want to face their sins because they're scared of saying them out loud. So they avoid confession. There's a million reasons. But it's when you know the fruit of confession, you know what it's like to be loved by God, and you're like, absolutely not. I don't care. I don't want the love of God.
Mhm.
That's the unforgivable sin. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be stressed over it.
Wait, I don't know if I'm confused. This, like, I just want to
No,
see if
please ask.
this
It's
is
okay.
right. But you were saying like you don't have the desire to like chase God. So if you get a feeling you're like, I don't want to read my Bible, like I know I should read my Bible, I'm just like, eh, if I know that I like should read my Bible, I'm just like, no, I want to go on my phone or I want to do something else. And like I know that I should be reading it and I still don't.
Mhm.
Would that be considered like unforgivable? Because like I
No.
know that I shouldn't be.
No, because why are you doing that? Why are you going through that tug of war in your heart and your mind? It's because of human weakness. It's like you are being pulled in one direction, but you're also being pulled in the other direction. And it's just even if you choose the first direction, like the worldly whatever thing, the sin instead of God, God is still gonna keep pulling at you, no matter what. Like you can run away from God, God's gonna run faster and chase you. um, but it's when you actively reject, like, um, that God is pulling you in that direction. If that kind of makes sense. It's not like did I choose to watch Netflix instead of pray. It's that I don't believe in prayer. And so I'm watching Netflix because I'm not even struggling with this other option of praying and being with God. It's that I am like I just don't care. And that I know I should care, but I'm not going to.
So any person who isn't Christian and doesn't like know God and they like,
That's not unforgivable. They don't know,
okay,
you know?
yeah.
That's our job as the church to let them know.
Wait, is there a sense like or an instance in the Bible where like it's has been committed or someone has committed it?
Judas.
Why?
But there is still some arguments out there that people say he maybe repented right before he committed suicide and all these things, but it's all speculation and argument, but nobody knows. But the way that the apostles speak about him in the book of Acts, it's as if like no, he committed something atrocious and God has not accepted, not God has he was unforgiven, not
Mhm.
because he wanted to be forgiven and so on. Like even people always they struggle with the story of Judas because after he sold Christ and betrayed him, remember what he did? What did Judas do before he committed suicide?
He like regretted his decision.
He regretted it, took the money, and said, "Never mind, take it back."
Isn't
I
that
don't
what
want.
caused him to commit in the first place? The guilt?
It was the guilt, but how did he handle the guilt? Where did he run? He still tried to receive like forgiveness by his own means. He didn't go to God. He went to the soldiers.
Mm,
You see the problem?
yeah.
He thought that I could reverse this because I feel bad. Is the goal to stop feeling bad, or is the goal to restore your relationship with God?
So
Exactly. So he was too focused on him feeling bad. At least that's how I was always taught that in that story. That's why even when he committed suicide, it was seen as he committed the unforgivable sin. It's like the forgiveness was waiting for him. He could have went to Christ. He knew where he was being crucified. He could have went up to the cross with Saint Mary and Saint John and begged for forgiveness and mercy. He didn't. He went to the soldiers and tried to reverse it. He still thought his life was his own, that he could have full control over his life. He didn't realize that like we need God. Whether we like it or not, we need him. And so because he failed to accept that invitation, even though he knew it, because he lived with Jesus for 3 years. So he wasn't unexcused. So I think he's usually seen as the example of the unforgivable sin.
so it's not the fact that he committed suicide.
No,
Okay.
definitely not. I think that his suicide was just a result of what happens when you fall into the unforgivable sin. You fall into despair. You feel like there's no point in life anymore because God is what gives you life, you know?
Yeah.
That's why you find the depression rates are extremely high for people who are not a part of an organized religion. I'm not going to just say Christianity, even though I advocate Christian is the true faith, obviously. But there are studies that have been done statistically. The recent one was in 2020, I think, that said people have double the amount of depression when they're not a part of an organized religion that has a moral standard and a framework and like an objective truth, which is usually Christianity, Judaism, or Islam are the three ones that have them usually. So yeah, but be a Christian, guys.
Mhm.
Is that
God loves you.
all the points?
Yeah. Any more questions?
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for
coming.
having us.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you, Abuna Musa, Peter, and Bishoy for joining us today.
Thank you.
We are CTP. Have a blessed day.